where did the idea of Shazam come from?
Well, it just came from the fact that my partners and I would hear music and we didn't know what it was. The technology didn't even exist. So we recruited Avery to be our business partner and said, listen, pal, can you please invent this for us in 3 months?
At what point did it start making money?
It's a fair question. I try to hide it as much as possible. But yeah.
Did it get worse when your revenue model, when you got the app out?
Oh, it got worse, I'll tell you, because our competitor at the time went free. So we had to respond.
How did it change your life? It's all in the press, it sold for 400 million. Does that make it very difficult for you?
No, I don't think so. I think it enables one to...
Hello, friends. Welcome to Business Without Bullshit. Today, we're delighted to have none other than Dhiraj Mukherjee, co-founder of Shazam, with us. We get into the wild story of how Shazam shook up the tech world and explore Dhiraj's journey from creating a revolutionary app to backing hundreds of businesses, and I mean hundreds. And for some fun, we put his music knowledge to the test by playing tracks to see if he could Shazam himself. Kinda. With this passion for making a real impact, his honest and open conversation with this game-changing legend, Dhiraj, was an honor and a pleasure to share with him. I hope you enjoy it. Dhiraj, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Andy. Great to be here.
Oh, what a lovely entry that is for you. So, Dhiraj, let's start with a question for the listeners, which is, what is keeping Dhiraj up at night at the moment?
What's keeping me up at night? Just supporting the entrepreneurs I've invested in. I'm a tech for good investor, which means I try to back people who are building businesses which will have a positive impact. But the jury is out, because I learned the hard way that being an entrepreneur is not easy and there's ups and downs. So whenever one of my companies is looking to raise money or growing internationally or trying to hire talent, I try to think about what I can do to help them out.
Do you, yes, impact investing, is it called, really?
That's right. Impact investing in general. And I tend to focus on technology because that's the area which I guess I've learned about. And that's where my networks are, what I'm fascinated by. But impact investing is exactly right.
It's a big world, technology. Any sector, or is there a sort of, tech for good? Does that mean it's life sciences or no? Anything?
Anything goes. I tend to follow the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and there's 17 of them which span anything from, climate action to clean oceans to alleviating poverty. So as far as I'm concerned, as long as it fits into that mission, then it's fair play. But the reality is that, technology doesn't solve all problems. So you tend to find in certain areas or certain domains, and, I get led by the companies that I'm involved with rather than trying to be a solution for everything which is out there.
The UN sustainability goals, are those the ones that used to be like 100 of them? They shortened them down. I remember that there used to be a lot,
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think they were sort of created about 10 years ago or so.
Okay.
And it's a great blueprint for business to be a force of good. And the reality is that there's a lot more than technology. There's policy, there's government intervention, there's measurement, there's lots of factors involved. But I'm a champion for technology and entrepreneurship as part of the solution, I guess.
Is there one or two things particularly you're involved in at the moment that's drawing more of your attention than others, or?
Yeah, a couple of things. So I heard Al Gore speak back in 2009.
Oh, wow. The legendary. Was that when he was doing those incredible talks about climate change and things?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yes. So he was a partner at Kleiner Perkins, which was a VC firm which invested in Shazam. And he did a private talk for our company, which was quite incredible. And that really opened my eyes to the climate crisis and, climate action and what we can do as individuals and organizations. So I try to track the energy transition, and I've put my money where my beliefs are, I guess, in trying to do something to reduce the carbon footprint and, accelerate the transition to renewable energy. But it's a big generational problem, which will take, decades to address. I'm also on the board of a company called MeVite, which is a UK startup, which is looking at mitigating unconscious bias in the recruitment process. And they are basically fighting to create a fairer workforce. And being a board member, that's a particularly close to my heart and somewhere where I try to spend as much time and energy as I can to promote their long-term success.
And it's particularly close to your heart, the recruiting thing, for any particular reason, or?
I think so, because the CEO and founder is called Reham Sati, and she's a real bulldog of an entrepreneur.
Force of nature.
Force of nature, that's exactly right. And I think that's what is needed for a startup to be successful. You need to have that drive and determination. And I think that, candidly, technology is still a male-dominated field. So when I see a woman entrepreneur with that drive and ambition, then I feel that if I can make a little bit of difference to the company, then that's beneficial in terms of having role models for more women to be involved in this space.
It's a huge issue. The sort of women in entrepreneurs and struggling in certain levels. I mean, do you have any sense of why you think it is?
I think that traditionally technology has tended to be male dominated, and that might be because the way that computer science evolved. And I'm also an investor in a company called Erase All Kittens, which tries to help.
Brilliant name.
Yeah, it's very creative. It tries to teach girls how to code by using gaming to draw them in, because software and games tend to be developed by men for boys, and that creates these barriers to entry for girls and women, which is a terrible thing. Now, the reality is that it runs through the system. So investors tend to be more men than women, and so there's a systematic kind of barriers. But that's why I like to back women like Reham, who are breaking down these barriers, breaking new ground, and through the software that MeBeat has developed for their clients, just create a fairer workforce over time.
Yeah, it's a sort of it's a sort of vicious or virtuous circle, isn't it? The creation of games. I watch my son and my daughter, sort of 3 and 5, and my daughter who's 3 will play with cars, but sort of and then she'll say, "I want to play car." But the difference, I mean, I remember years ago, boys want to smash things with hammers. I mean, literally get car, and the girls will, I literally had that experience. One of them was smashing stuff with hammers, and I was helping, and then the girl said, "Oh, come with me, uncle," and then they took me to that imaginary tea party, and you sit around and you're like, this could not be more different. It's a sort of I don't know, I think there's the aspect of the way we use the quality, but in a weird way I feel like we're different. There's differences, sure, there's generalization, but exactly that, you need to create games that are different and appeal to different types of people, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's right. And what we're not conscious of is that we tend to be a member of a tribe or several tribes. And then you are biased towards people who share your hobbies, your worldview, you have a similar background, and that creates groupthink, particularly in large organizations and boards and so forth. And sometimes talent lies in unexpected places. So they may not have had the privilege of a formal education, or they might be from a different country, or they might be of a different religion and not have the same appearance in a corporate environment. But that doesn't mean that they don't have the skills or the fit for the job. And by using AI to remove the human unconscious bias, it allows companies to hire the right talent and therefore create a fairer workforce. So that's the principle behind MeBeat.
I was asking an interesting question. So at OC, the only requirement is you're kind, basically, if you boil it down. Above that, we like a sense of humor, but it's not required. And then I was asking a diversity expert, and they were saying, well, actually, that is possibly what's the right word? A skew or a prejudice of some kind, because some people would find humor more difficult or stuff like this. I mean, I was trying to separate it in my head, and I was thinking, there's a level to which a company will have a culture, I guess, and you're going to join that tribe's culture, isn't it?
Yes.
But that's, you have to, there's a very fine line between that and sort of, selecting, not having real diversity. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I think that's right. And for humor, for instance, I spent many years in the US, and there's certain jokes which work and don't work. And when my jokes felt flat, then I felt I was excluded. And when I moved to England 25 years ago, people appreciate my humor in a different way. And it's very subtle. But if you are managing what you're saying because you have to fit in and you're not being your true self, then that creates a barrier. And
how interesting. And so in the US, did you feel you were trying to sort of manage your Did you grow up in India? Where did you grow up?
I was born in India,
Yeah.
but my father worked for Air India, so I grew up all over the world. So I lived in Greece and France and Switzerland and Singapore and Japan. So yeah.
Okay. Oh wow. I was trying to guess where your cultural sense of humor was from, because I mean, you know, there's a very strong sense of humor in India, and actually it's quite similar to Britain.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. You know, hanging out with my father-in-law regularly. He's from India. You know, but you know, I think we like to watch the big man fall as a sort of common thing. There's a sort of self-deprecation. But in that example you're giving, did you feel when you were in America you were having to sort of hold back, and then that restricts you from being all you can? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. So generally you have to be more literal.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, I moved to the US when I was 18 for university, and I didn't know anything about American sports. So I didn't know basketball, baseball, American football. And so you can't join in a conversation because you don't have any of the cultural references. And so you're an outsider. And it took me many years to gradually break in. But you know, a lot of people wouldn't be afforded that chance. Let's say if you're applying for a job, or if you look different from the core of a company's culture, and that's a miss, because then you're missing out on both talent as well as diverse thinking, you know, range of ideas. So that's the insidious aspect of unconscious bias. You know, people are not deliberately discriminatory. It's just you can't help it because you can relate to certain things and not to others.
I think that's a great point. Yeah, I mean, my wife who grew up in Trinidad, there's pointless showing her some British comedy because it's just, no matter how funny I think it is, she's not going to get all the reference points, you know. Yeah. But it doesn't mean she doesn't have a sense of humor. But you're right. You feel completely out your depth of people making jokes that you don't get. In fact, American comedy, I often try and watch some on Netflix. And I just I don't know what this is all about. You know what I mean? So. One of the examples they gave me, interestingly, they were like, well, you know, if someone's very neurodiverse or, you know, on the spectrum, then they, you know, humor may be different for them. I mean, that wasn't a good example for us because, you know, as a firm of accountants, we have plenty of people on the spectrum. You might not be surprised to know, and they have a huge sense of humor. I don't understand their jokes all the time,
right?
But you know, it's an interesting one to sort of examine the world in. I think the evidence is that diverse groups of people do better, but you've got to have we're so hardwired to be tribal, as you say. I mean, that is so fascinating to me because it feels like the only way we're really the world has got to become one tribe at some point. You know what I mean? For us to stop that, we will have wars while we think like tribes, you know?
Yes.
I mean, do you believe one day we've got to be all one people, do you know what I mean? And think of it like that to stop our tribal side, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've overcome many of these kind of barriers and prejudices over time. And, you know, I think in general, society is much more open-minded, much more tolerant. But neurodiversity is a great example. So there's neurodiversity in my family, and we're understanding more and more that, in fact, many entrepreneurs, for instance, have ADHD. Yeah. And that can be a superpower rather than a limitation. And these are journeys of discovery that we all go through when we better understand topics like mental health, for instance, is another one, which is now much better understood than it was 10 or 20 years ago. And so I think society will continue to evolve and improve, but we need to make an effort to focus on, you know, what we're learning about how people work, how organizations work, you know, how teams can be successful. And that's what I find fascinating about being an investor, is which I'm learning constantly from my portfolio companies.
Do you think on sustainability as a whole, you know, there are some really difficult issues, you know. I think, you know, take oil, for instance, you know, they seem to just keep finding more of it. I mean, there used to be a concept of peak oil, we're running out of oil. I mean, most of us grew up with an education of like, oh, it'll all be gone in 10 years. Yeah. And now they're like, oh no, we've got more than we've ever had, you know, and US is the largest producer again. I mean, you know, it's not fair necessarily to put that question on you. I don't expect you to be an expert in oil, but those things are very hard for people to balance in their head. What do you feel about oil? Do you think we've got to stop using it, or, you know?
Well, the great thing is that there are alternatives now. So renewable energy, for instance, is growing dramatically. And that is because of the breakthroughs in things like photovoltaic cells. So we've got an unlimited amount of sunshine, which is hitting the earth. It's just a question of harnessing that. And if you look at the efficiency of solar panels, it's gone through the roof.
Has it?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, has there been a big jump recently? Because it's sort of stagnated for ages. Has someone suddenly made a big jump again?
Massive jump, yes.
Oh, wow.
And so I had the privilege of hearing Al Gore speak a second time, 10 years after I heard him the first time. And he was much, much more upbeat. But you know where that comes from? It's people investing in solar panels, which drives down the cost. When you drive down the cost, then it becomes economic to be able to, buy and harness that source of energy. So you need the early adopters, you need the pioneers, you need the people who'll take a chance, and then that drives change over time. So what I'm saying is that there's so much progress happening, which no one has heard of today just because it's tiny. But if you fast forward 10 or 20 years, then it'll dramatically change the landscape, just as it has in technology, for instance. The same, I believe, will happen in the energy transition, in renewable energy. And
it's coming.
It is, yes.
But you can solve the transport, can't you? Mm-hmm. Or you can solve, we need energy, I need to power my phone. The tricky bit with oil is all the plastics and it's such, the pharmaceuticals, there's so many uses for it. I mean, I guess over time we'll solve those problems too.
Yeah, I think that as an example for corporate leaders, if you think about just about what's the lowest cost source of power, then oil might be the answer. But by saying, why don't we try other forms, or why don't we give a chance to a startup which will install solar panels across our commercial, footprint of buildings, then that's more likely that others will benefit as well. So I think a certain amount of altruism, a certain amount of kind of leading the charge is incumbent on leaders today, because that's what actually drives change and transformation over a period of time. So I don't think that oil will go away, day after tomorrow, but that's not a reason to stay away from the innovation that we're seeing in the energy transition.
What do you think? I find this a question that's tricky. What should a small or medium-sized business be doing, about climate change or anything? Let's take a technology business based in the UK, who's struggling to make money or struggling to get it going. And, what do you have any sense of what a business like that should be doing?
Yeah, I think it's a question of exploring what the options are out there. And so today, the big technology giants, if you look at, the Metas or the Googles, they didn't exist 25 years ago. Nobody had even heard of them. But now you take them for granted. So the giants in this domain in 20 years from now, nobody's heard of them today.
Right.
What they need is a chance. And that chance comes from people saying, well, let's find out more. Let's do a pilot. Let's partner to see if they can solve this problem. And that takes a little bit of an effort, a bit of a stretch from the business as usual. But I think that there's a movement, a groundswell in that direction, and that's what I'm trying to support.
I mean, there's the Shazams of the world too. But Shazam? I mean, I'd be curious on just like where did the idea of Shazam come from when you were starting out 20 years ago?
Well, it just came from the fact that my partners and I would hear music and we didn't know what it was. So it was literally as simple as that.
Are you a mathematician by training or a computer scientist, or what's your?
Well, I have an econometrics degree, but I'm not the clever one. My business partner Avery came up with the algorithm which powers Shazam, and that's
right.
But
it was phenomenal when it first launched, and it was I remember the 2580, and I just you couldn't believe it, and you get the text message and everything, and it was like, oh my god, this is so much better than going into the record shop and trying to hum the tune. When I was a little boy, I was obsessed with this song, and my poor brother he's 10 years older. He had to go in the record shop, so like about 20 times, and it was the one with the rabbit in it. Anyway, it doesn't matter, but I always felt sorry for the people in record record shops who would stand there going like, oh, here's another one. You know, some granny coming in saying, do you know the number? Amazing piece of technology though. I mean, you know, today, you know, is it flourishing as a business? I mean, it's part of Apple now, is it? Or?
Yeah, that's right. So we started the business in 2000, which is, you know, a lifetime ago. We launched in the UK in 2002. As you said, it was a number you dialed and it would call an IVR system, and then it would hang up and you'd get a text message with the name of the song and the artist. It was so antiquated, it's difficult to even imagine. And then when the iPhone launched in 2007 and the App Store in 2008, when Shazam became an app, and it took many years from there, but we sold the business to Apple in 2018, so it's now part of the Apple family and ecosystem.
What I think is amazing about it is music is all so similar and so different. The fact that you know, it's a really interesting thing that the fact that you could play just a little snippet of something, you know, and it be able to decipher that, you know, even in that terrible, you know, back on mobile phones, GPS in a basement, listening to music, you know, it would have been distorted, everything, you know, but it didn't, none of that mattered, you know. I mean, incredible, really.
And this is it. And sometimes I'm asked, you know, what was the secret of the success? And it was literally the technology breakthrough. It was because Avery was a genius and he came up with this, you know, absolute breakthrough technology which solved this problem. And that's what allowed Shazam we created the music recognition category on mobile phones.
Was what he did unique? He was a genius. He sort of came up with something that had never been done before in terms of it could be applied in other ways, is it?
Well, no, it was just that Chris, Philippe, and I, you know, three business guys wanted to be entrepreneurs, and this is the idea that we landed on. The technology didn't even exist. So we recruited Avery to be our business partner and said, listen, pal, can you please invent this for us in 3 months? And
classic.
He did.
We'll get you all the McDonald's you want. Crack on with it, mate.
I mean, we were so incredibly naive, but...
did he do it?
He did.
Wow. You were hanging out with some clever people back then.
Well, this is it.
My mate, you know, Jerry would have been like, no, mate, that's not happening.
I mean, in fairness, everyone else we spoke to called us crazy and threw us out. So it was only Avery who had the gumption to go for it. And he was on the verge of giving up as well. He was so close to quitting. He was rehearsing a speech where he would tell us.
Oh, what, over the 3 months?
Yeah,
and you only had 3 months because that's all the money you had? Or?
No, we just, you know.
We're impatient.
Exactly. Yeah. Classic entrepreneur types.
Yeah.
You know, no time to waste. Let's get on with it.
Yeah. Wow. And, you know, how did it, you know, you took that all the way. How does it change you when you come out the other side of it? Because, I mean, there would have been huge periods of pain. I mean, if it's not too impolite to ask, at what point did it start making money for you, or you started to be like, oh, I can, you know, buy a house or live a life? Or was it only on exit that happened? Or
yeah, I know it's a fair question. I try to hide it as much as possible. But yeah,
we're British. We don't talk about money, but you know,
no, it took 15 years to get to profitability.
Wow.
So in that time, we were raising money, you know, trying to conserve cash as much as possible, inventing new business models, you know, trying to keep the lights on one way or the other. So you're right. It was a tremendous amount of, you know, pain and the roller coaster ride. And there were high points as well. So bringing in top investors and you know, successes along the way as well. But I think what it's taught me a few things. One is to be more adaptable and how to, you know, sort of roll with the punches. And then second, you know, the value of resilience and patience and, you know, basically making sure that you're in the right place at the right time when the opportunity presents itself.
Okay. And that was particularly, I mean, can you choose to be in the right place at the right time? Isn't that luck?
Yes. So there's a big slice of luck, but the analogy, for instance, is if you're learning how to surf, you know, there's no point sitting on the beach. You've got to be out in the waves.
Right.
You've got to be in the right place at the right time when that wave shows up. And this is the message as well. So entrepreneurs don't need to know this because they're out there already. This is my message to corporate leaders more than anything else, which is there's a fear of trying new things. There's a aversion to experimenting. There's a reluctance to, you know,
there's a resistance.
Exactly. And my message is, if you don't try it, then you'll miss that moment. And there are ways to mitigate the fear factor. But the startups which are out there are dealing with it right here, right now, and they will tell you their story. They will lay out their vision. They will ask you for your money if you partner with them and give them a chance. And that to me is it's not a secret, but it's a formula for basically being able to anticipate and adapt to the future.
It's that phrase, isn't it? Inspiration will strike, but it must catch you working. That's someone far more clever and famous than me. So this is probably Einstein or someone. But it's a great phrase.
I haven't heard that one before. That's a good one.
And did you find the UK ecosystem at the time supportive? What did you feel about the UK system, and how do you feel about it now?
Well, at the time, there really wasn't much of an ecosystem. So I moved over from Silicon Valley to...
Comparatively, yeah.
Yes, compared to now, where it's a fabulous community and so supportive, so many resources and learning. At the time, it was, very novel. And I moved over to set up the UK office of an internet consulting firm I used to work for at the time. And I quit in 2000 to start Shazam with spectacularly bad timing, because just before the internet bubble burst. Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, at the time, there were dead startups in the streets because of lack of funding. And we were very lucky just to make it through, just to live to tell the story. And there were many more ups and downs since then, including the great financial crisis in 2007, 2008. So the way I think of it now, it built character. Overnight success didn't work out for us, but what we were left with was a certain amount of resilience and the ability to and willingness to adapt.
How do you choose the people you invest in now and get involved in? What's the most important things for you when you're looking at a company?
Well, I do look at the traits which I recognize in some of the things we believed in, which is, not taking no for an answer.
Madness. No.
Madness, exactly. You hit the nail on that. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. If you really believe that you can make everyone you come across see the world from your perspective, that's a form of madness, but that's really valuable. And I think that, Steve Jobs said this better. It's the crazy ones who change the world. And, the sensible choice is to stick to the tried and tested. But this is the wonderful thing about the community of entrepreneurs in the UK today. There's many crazy ones, and it's a privilege to be involved because I can see literally in front of my eyes how they're creating an impact today.
Do you think, I feel that we really struggle to talk about money in this country. And if you look at a lot of industries, we're not as good at raising money. If you take an easy one, video games, we make some of the best video games in the world, but we're not very good at asking for money and stuff. How did it change your life once you've sold and it's all in the press? It's sold for 400 million and stuff. I mean, does that make it very difficult for you? You've got to keep a very low profile and things.
No, I don't think so. I think it enables one to put one's time and energy into causes one believes in. And that's very empowering. So I don't have a respectable job. Being a angel investor is, it just sounds very arcane and exotic, but it allows...
You're a rare bird now.
But it allows you to write your own rules. And I think that's very empowering, because one of the lessons which I learned at Shazam, and this is Peter Drucker who said this first, which is the best way to predict the future is to create it. And, we're all in the same boat. We're part of the same society. We're looking at a future which we want to be, brighter than it is today. How does one make that happen? We don't have a script. We don't have the answers. But I think that having been an entrepreneur or being in a position to invest or to help the next generation is empowering. And other sections of society have that opportunity too. And, helping the entrepreneurial ecosystem, promoting the startups, supporting entrepreneurs is something which I think all of us can get involved with.
You mentioned embracing your ignorance is the greatest wisdom. How do you apply that mindset in your work?
Well, the reality is that when you're an entrepreneur, then there's so much you don't know, and you're learning all the time about the market, the technology, how to hire, etc. But it's easier at my stage in life to basically acknowledge everything which I don't know. I think it's harder when you're, let's say, the CEO of a big company, because people look to you for answers. They look for guidance and direction. But do the CEOs of big companies today know where Gen AI is going? I don't think so. That's not what they were trained in. That's not their discipline. That's not their forte. So that's what I mean by ignorance is a superpower, by acknowledging the fact that you don't know. Then you can ask better questions. Then you can bring in the right people. Then you can ask, the leading entrepreneurs, like, what's their vision? So I think it lends a certain humility, but also leads to better and quicker results by saying there's so much to be learned here.
The stupid questions are the best questions. I just, I don't know why we're so scared of humiliation, all of us, aren't we? Especially in a group setting.
Yes, that's right. You don't want to display ignorance, but actually it can be really powerful because it both honest as well as elicits information.
There's a great lady who works for me and works with me in marketing in the firm, Jo Croffrey. Actually, I've never worked out, Joe, how I say your name right. Croffy. Anyway, but yeah, we want to get her a T-shirt that just says why, because she just always comes from this, she would also always say, I don't know anything about this, and I'm but then, she has a great way of sort of saying, but why, and it's always the best question, because it's like, why are we doing, why, what is the point of these things? I wish people, I don't know, how you empower people to sort of, ask stupid questions and things. I mean, maybe on that point, what do you think about meetings? I mean, are you someone who's got a particular approach to how meetings should happen or work, or how to make them efficient?
I've been doing walking meetings with my dog recently, which I find is very effective. Get some fresh air, get some exercise, and
ring people, or they walk with you? You mean
just walk side by side and have a chat and get out of the office. That works really well for me.
That's a Steve Jobs one, isn't it? He used to love walking meetings, I think.
No, he got there before me.
Well, that's okay. No, there's something about walking. It's actually similar to sort of driving a car when you're not opposed, isn't it? I mean, there's something about being opposite someone that's slightly more adversary, isn't it? I mean, I find too on learning. I mean, obviously we have to do a lot of learning here, and God, PowerPoint and stuff. Now if we're doing some tax session or whatever, I just do the setup, go for a walk with the dog, put the headphones on. I learn so much more. There's a challenge with this sort of visual audio mix up. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you feel about PowerPoint world or.
Well, I think that it's amazing that PowerPoint's longevity is astonishing, but I'm trying my best to, adapt. So as an example, I've started using ChatGPT on my phone, and
well, what are you asking it?
Well, you ask it anything and it comes back with answers. This is brilliant. And so it's just a habit which I'm trying to develop, because the technology is galloping forward so quickly. It's almost incomprehensible, because the engineers at OpenAI, they don't even know what they're creating, because
they have no idea how it's working it out anymore.
No,
do they?
Because it's so complex, and the sophistication comes from the volume of data as well as how that data is handled. So we're all of us in a discovery zone, and I think that I fall back on old patterns and practices. I'll use PowerPoint because I know how to use it, but that's not the right answer.
Yeah, what's the phrase? AI is not going to take your job, but the person using AI will.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I've got a little thought which went through my head, which is, AI is the operating system of this decade and maybe beyond that. And it's literally that fundamental. And I've only just recently started treating it that way, and that changes how I use the technology and embed it in my life. And this is a journey. When I talk to other tech entrepreneurs, they say that they're drinking from the fire hose in terms of the knowledge, the information, trying to keep up with the pace of change. And these are people who are
drinking for the fire hose without using AI, just generally, or use AI to help them with that.
The rate of change in the application of AI in their businesses even for a technologically competent CEO, is almost overwhelming. So, the rest of us have no chance. And that's why it's going to take time, and it takes, a process of unwiring our old habits and rewiring to new habits, which is underway now. But this is going to play out over a period of time, I believe.
You've been here before. This is 2000.
That's exactly
right.
Yeah.
I remember 2000. I remember my dad going to a conference, and he came back saying, it's the future, it's the future. Do you know what I mean? But then we had to wait a long time. We only had things like Shazam, nothing else worked for ages.
No, you're spot on. So I remember the first time when the internet browser was launched, Netscape, Mark Andreessen, I was in Silicon Valley at the time. I remember when, mobile phones first appeared. And then, of course, the magic moment for us when the App Store launched and Shazam became an app. That was a game changer. But it's exactly the same thing now with Gen AI.
We're tinkering around with it, aren't we?
We are tinkering around with it. And unfortunately, age has done me no favors, but I've found the solution. And I've got a really young, energetic, forward-looking team. And so they help me to adapt my thinking.
You're the old man.
I'm the old man. That's right. But it happens to all of us. I wouldn't wish old age on anyone, but it creeps up on you. But that I feel is the solution. So intergenerational teams, just unlock tremendous value.
I so feel that at the moment, I'll be naughty, but in 2000, you were obviously like, internet, pornography. And then you'd have to wait an hour for a picture of a pair of boobs. I feel like that now with the people talking about AI I typed this thing in and it came out with rubbish. I'm like, yeah, just wait 10 years, man. It's going to blow your mind,
Yeah. And I think it's so easy to be skeptical and negative. And one of the things which we did with Shazam, for instance, was we wanted every single song in there just so that it would work as often as possible. So the first thing
that's the proof of concept, though,
exactly,
isn't it?
People will say, that's rubbish. You'll never identify this, Greek song that I've listened to on my holiday. And when it works, that's when people are convinced. But the problem is that we've got, thousands and tens of thousands of songs which have never been Shazam once.
Yeah. In your database,
yes,
whirring away.
That's right. That's exactly right. So it's the same thing. So if you find something in the technology which doesn't work, you say, it's useless. But that's not the point. The point is it's working 4 times out of 5, and then it'll be working 4.9 times out of 5. And then if you haven't got on board, then you're going to be left behind. So.
You mentioned your team. You said before leaving a vacuum for your team to fill in order to drive creativity. Mm-hmm. It'd be good to unpack that a bit. And how do you keep the balance between, guiding them and then letting them have their space? Or, how do you approach your team and run them?
Yeah, the way to think about it is if you ask better questions, you'll get better answers. And what I try to stay away from is the directive model of leadership, which is this is where we're going. This is how we're going to do it, go. Because I don't think it works anymore, because the destination tends to be more fluid, because it's more of an exploration model rather than a fixed destination model. And in that context, by hiring people who are, enjoy problem solving, who like to take on responsibility, who are aligned with the business's mission, but not necessarily want the things to be broken down into bite-sized tasks, I think you get much better outcomes. And that's what I mean by, I call it creating a compelling vacuum. So create a space that the teams can run into in the context of a challenge that the business is facing.
It's quite hard. I find trying to, everyone always wants to know everything, and almost if you don't know everything, you know nothing. I find that businesses move so hard. It's quite empowering. I'm really into trying to empower people below, but it's trying to give. They've gone over it. No, actually, we worked out a few years ago that's a terrible idea. Or I guess it's. Maybe you've just said that. Really, it's just giving them some parameters, I guess. So it's not a complete vacuum, is it? It's like, within these walls, is it? Or?
That's exactly right. So what does business success look like within our industry or within this company? That's not hard to define. It could be revenues, it could be profitability, it could be international expansion, it could be a new product line, it could be market share. That's not difficult to define. How do we go about doing it is harder. And if we use old heuristics, old methods, old ways of approaching it, I don't think it works particularly well. Just give you an example. So from my experience with software development, the way it used to work in the old days was you'd have a plan. The problem with software is that it never goes according to plan, And so a bunch of clever engineers came up with this concept of agile development. And the way agile software development works is you say, look, let's just take a month. Let's see where we get to at the end of a month, and then we'll revisit and go from there. And people were up in arms over this because that means, you're not making any kind of commitment. You don't know what you're going to deliver.
Oh, was it? Was it received badly at the time?
Well, yeah, because it was controversial. You want, you want to know exactly what you're going to get at the end of a year and a half. That was how
we wanted to Shazam, not Shazam.
But that's not the way the world works in software. And it turns out, in my opinion, that's not the way the world works in business either. You don't know, you don't have this crystal ball. And so it becomes pointless to try to latch on to predictability and, clarity. You're much better off what I call designing for uncertainty. Things are going to change. We need to have more flexibility. We need to be more fluid in our thinking. So that's my mantra.
Do you think, for a while, if you go back 10 years, everyone was like, you need to get your kids to do software development. Now, like with AI, is AI going to write all the software? All these kids going to come out of university and we're like, actually, surely there's a point we don't write software anymore. AI writes it.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the most powerful applications.
Gosh.
Yeah. Oh, AI is so helpful for software developers. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, because if someone, I saw on social media or whatever, someone had made it recreate Doom and it was just doing it through pictures and stuff. So, but where does that lead us to a place of ignorance again? That basically we will say, make it do this, and it writes the software. Let me ask it this way. If you had a kid these days, would you tell them to go do software development? You say, I wouldn't bother.
Oh, I wouldn't bother. So
wow.
I wouldn't bother. So what I tell my kid nowadays is to learn how to learn, because anything you commit to today is not going to be valid in 10 years from now. And so in my day, you didn't have the opportunity to learn on the go because the internet didn't exist. You went to school, you went to university, you get your degree, you're done. Nowadays, it's a lifetime of learning. And so that's what I'd want my kids to be good at, is to learn continuously as they go.
God, that's such a good statement. Learn how to learn. Basically, learn the discipline. It's a discipline, isn't it, to learn? Because it requires effort.
It does.
I've just watched with my son that my dear wife and mother-in-law, they're like, right, they're making him work all the time, so, but they're calling it work and they're calling it and he's starting to, now, he didn't mind it a bit before, to practice my words and my letters and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to do it, and I'm like, guys, you are selling this badly. You need to be telling him this is play. This is language play. I had to do that for my exams. I used to have to do a mental trick trying to do tax exams and stuff and say, no, I love this. I love questions, questions about tax. This is interesting, but, it didn't work that well. But learning how to learn is such an interesting art form. We don't really get taught it either.
No. And this is the thing. So old age plays against you because your brain becomes less kind of open and, you've learned 15 different software packages and you don't want to learn a 16th one.
I don't think it's just... I think it can learn whenever it wants, but we become resistant to it almost.
That's right. And I'm guilty of this myself. And I try to think of myself as an early adopter and curious about technology. It's just simply not true. It's more and more of an effort. I think for young people, the opportunity that they have, they're curious. They don't come with this baggage. And my son, Jeremy, who's 11, for instance, he's fascinated with YouTube and creators and so forth, which is an entirely different category. It's only been around 10 or 15 years. And initially for me, it felt it was just too novel. But when I think about it, that's where the repositories of knowledge are today.
Yes.
The creators,
why are we sitting here?
the creators are the ones who are building our future, because that's where people can tap in. So I need to change my thinking as well. I need to kind of adapt to how one kind of builds one knowledge, which is very different from the way I learned when I was younger.
It's not just AI that's learning really quick. I think what's amazing now is anyone in the world who has access to a laptop and an internet connection has infinite knowledge at their fingertips with visual and audio. And frankly, there are some incredible YouTube. It's not your rubbish teacher John who's hungover and just awful and doesn't even enjoy the subject. I mean, you're talking some of the the ones that are popular on YouTube. He's one of the finest trainers in the world on this subject, using all sorts of techniques. So you wonder what that does to the world. There's these sort of push and pull elements. We sort of become stupid as we put everything in the hands of our phones and AI. But at the same time, there's the ability to learn now. I mean, it's breathless, I would say.
That's right. Have you come across the Khan Academy, for instance?
No.
It's an
KHAN,
KHAN, which is about teaching maths. And the problem with maths is that the bright ones get it quickly, and the ones who are not as numeric will take longer. And you've got one teacher in front of a classroom of 25 people. There's no chance. They're aiming for somewhere in the middle. Now, what the Khan Academy does is flips it around. So it's video-based at your own pace, and you can, self-paced. And it's really powerful, and it can just unlock concepts which would go right over your head in a classroom, and you wouldn't dare to ask a question.
You can go back. Yeah, you can. I'll have it again. What did you
exactly
say?
Right. And so someone like Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation, is donating a lot of money to the Khan Foundation, the Khan Academy.
Really?
Because by changing the levels of education all over the world, it has a massive impact on development. And so there's just an example of, how our concept of using technology for education has evolved dramatically.
You can see a world where YouTube will be so far ahead of what's going on in the educational system, probably already is, that you start to wonder about the educational system. You start to say, well, maybe just homeschool, and, it's almost the Montessori, the effect of just follow things you're curious in, have YouTube, off you go, I mean, you need structure and things, but, it is funny how education is so stuck in time at the same time. Yeah,
that's right. And it's changing slowly. And I don't worry that much about our kids, because I think that they have the advantage of, the technology at their fingertips and the knowledge. What I worry about is, leaders, senior execs, people of my generation who have access, but don't necessarily have the inclination. And
don't have the habits.
Exactly. And it's breaking out of old habits and learning new habits, which gets harder and harder.
It's so hard.
It is hard.
I mean, they come up to you on the computer and they say, you don't need to do all of that. You just click there. And you're like, yeah, but I like doing all of that. Like in my brain, that feels easier.
Right.
It's like driving a route, that's longer, It's I don't know. And as you say, I'm trying to do it the same with ChatGPT. I'm literally trying to remember. I'm trying to do something ChatGPT. Remember, and it saves so much time and gives me so. I had last night tired trying to write this email with pros and cons of these 3 different scenarios for this client, and they want to buy this business. And I'm like, I've run out of pros and cons, and I was like, ChatGPT, give me pros and cons. It's incredible. It just piles them out. I'm like, oh yeah, brilliant. I hadn't thought of those 4.
Yeah, it probably feels like cheating, but
it does feel a bit like cheating.
It's not. And
I almost feel to write at the bottom of the email, I didn't come up with all of this.
Right. Fair enough. I mean, I've another one of my investments is a company called Humanity, which is about longevity and health span. So basically, trying to have more years of good health, and that's another big mission, because nutrition has improved. We understand much better the value of exercise, for instance, sleep, etc., and that can contribute a lot to societies which have historically not have those long health spans. Now, unfortunately, I've fallen down the rabbit hole a little bit, and I've joined a gym, and But I'm thinking to myself, it's all very well working on my
joining a gym. So 2000.
I know, it's terrible.
Are you popping pills?
No, not yet. But I'm thinking to myself, it's all very well, using the Nautilus machine, but what I need is a tech gym as well, something which exercises my tech muscles and being able to, adapt. And that doesn't really exist. We embark on our own learning journeys. We have to design them ourselves. We have to, grasp the nettle and
I mean, music, I'm a huge music fan, and I trying to stay current with the kids, it kind of just happens to you. Music is about memory, music is about your emotions and stuff, and you do hop back. Trying to stay current, I mean, that's really hard, because actually if I go back in the day, getting into hip hop took me a long time. I had to listen to a lot of it until I was trying to be cool, and then I was like, oh, I get it. But it is I hate the idea that I'll get sort of stuck in time, but it's all the same problem, isn't it? You like what you're past. In fact, that I feel we should. Are you a music fan at all?
I am. Yes.
Oh, you are.
Yeah.
I feel just for the fun of it, we should actually play you a song. See if you can guess it. Do you think?
Chance. Absolutely no chance whatsoever.
Let's do an easy one. Let's do an easy one.
Right.
Go on. We'll just do one or two for a giggle. It's made me think of it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'll pick my son's playlist because he's got all my classics on it. Let's see if we can do.
Sounds good. While you're pulling that up, there's a TV show called Beat Shazam, and the contestant, yes, it's in the US. It's in the 5th or 6th season. It's hosted by Jamie Foxx, and my business partner Chris and I went out to watch the recording in Hollywood, which is quite an
experience. Did they beat it?
Well, yeah. They were incredible. Within a couple of seconds of music, they could name that song. Chris and I were staring at each other blankly. We had no idea what the
I'll give you some easy ones. Let's try.
I know that song. Yeah. Don't tell me. I definitely know it. Yeah. It said Start Me Up.
Oh, it does sound like Start Me Up by Rolling Stones. It's Highway to Hell by AC/DC. Oh. It does sound very similar to Start Me Up. I think you may have done a disservice to their publishing.
Oh, this is a tragedy. If my son Max catches me not being able to name that song, I'm in deep trouble.
We'll do two more. How about
Don't tell me. I can't name that song. It's so familiar. Rising Up. It's Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Oh my goodness! Okay, look at the time. I really need to go.
We'll do. Let's do a song of all time. Let's do this one.
Is that Imagine? John Lennon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice,
Have I passed the test? Can we move on to the next segment?
Two out of three. Oh. 2 out of 3.
Oh,
but yeah, AC/DC fallback was not so good.
Let's edit that out, please.
That was brilliant. And you, of all these sort of journeys you've gone on and stuff, is there anything really, any brilliant advice you've ever received from anyone that really stays with you?
The one which I think of is my grandfather was the admiral of the Indian Navy.
No way. That's a big deal.
Yeah, he was a real inspiration to me. And
gosh,
he always said, if you put your mind to something, you can make it happen. And that stuck with me. And I think that it wasn't meant to be business advice. It was more life advice. But that would be the one piece which is true for me today and for entrepreneurs, I believe, as well, which is you can make it so if you put your mind to it.
Tenacity, though. You've got to keep going.
Yes.
And do you think there's anything out there in business at the moment that, excuse the French, you don't have to swear, is bullshit? There's a bullshit that really needs to be questioned. I guess, we normally ask within your industry, but so that could be in the industry of angels, but just in the industry, I guess, of investment or startup culture or...
Yeah, I guess that, you hear like go big or go home, that kind of thing doesn't resonate with me, because sometimes you struggle away for a while before you find the magic kind of product market fit or whatever it is. And it's not all about hitting it out of the park on the first shot. But do
you think that's a culture here? It's certainly a phrase, but that kind of means just throw everything at it day one, does it?
Yeah, I think that there is certainly in some parts of startup land the belief that you've got to be massive, otherwise it's not worth it.
Oh, well, that's almost America. If you're not going to be worth $1 billion, you're not going to be worth anything, is it? You know?
Yeah. And part of it also comes down to, let's say, the structure of the venture capital industry. So, you know, if you are investing $1 billion fund, then it's a waste of your time to talk to a company which is raising 5 million. It's just not worth it. Yeah. So,
but I mean, I agree with you that the focus on growth is you know, part of sustainability, as I understand it, is having more sustainable companies and not being about growth. But if we take our business, because in a way, we'd quite like not to grow, just to have a nice family, you know, in terms of the whole, not as in I'm in a family business, but as in the family of the business. But if we don't grow, the talent leaves. You know, it's not just you need to grow to help stock market people or whoever, or get investors because they need to see growth and stuff. It's growth because talent needs space to spread their wings.
Yes,
you know,
that's
do you
true.
think businesses can stagnate successfully, you know, as a model? I mean, you know, it could be a million industries, but
yeah, I know. You're absolutely right. So I think growth is necessary to create opportunities for people. But the question is growth at what cost? If it's the cost of the mental health of the owners or employees, then that's not such a good thing. And I think there's a huge opportunity for businesses to be a force for good. And what I mean by that is growth by all means, profits by all means, but also to be able to, you know, offer people working conditions which enhance their life or to make a contribution to the planet. So I think that the old model of business as a pure capitalist money-making machine is not one which I kind of buy into.
yeah, hopefully. I mean, I think so much has changed recently. Well, Dhiraj, you've been absolutely brilliant. So we'll just go on to a couple of fun bits. These are the easy bits now. You've done the difficult questions. I think you did quite well. So it was a very good media training there, dear. I felt, you know, excellent media training. Well done. So this is the quickfire round. We're going to ask you some questions you will hopefully know the answers to.
Okay.
Just quick answers. Get to know you a little bit better. Dee's cueing some music.
Yeah.
And what was your first job?
My first job was I was an intern at Citibank in Tokyo.
No way. God, you really traveled, didn't you?
I did. My dad worked for Air India, so that's why we grew up in lots of different places.
Gosh, and but of those places, do you have a favorite country? I love Japan, by the way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Japan was fascinating. It's completely different from, you know, my country, which is India, which is sort of, you know, chaotic and
Opposites almost, aren't they?
Very much so. Yeah. But I've been very lucky to have experienced these different countries and cultures and taken away a little bit of understanding of the people and how people interact and think. So it's been a blessing.
But Britain's best.
No, yes, of course, Britain's best. Yeah.
Just to get clear, what was your worst job?
My worst job? Oh, gosh. What was my worst job? I can't remember. I've been quite fortunate in my career. There's nothing which
Early days of Shazam, maybe.
No. Actually, I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. It was just like the thrill of, you know, just it's like the thrill of the unknown was fantastic.
What a lineage, though. You've got your admiral of your grandfather. Then your dad ends up in Air India.
Yeah.
You should have done transport. I mean, you know, you should have done helicopters or something.
God, yeah, I didn't think of it at the time. Yeah, you're right.
Favorite subject at school?
Oh, I was a maths nerd. I love maths.
Okay, very good. And what's your special skill, do you think?
My special skill? I don't know if I have any, but...
I think you might.
I'm good at languages. I tend to pick up languages.
How many languages do you speak?
I'm like 5 or 6, I think. But
wow.
Well, because I'm from India, so you speak...
Yeah, you immediately speak 3,
exactly,
don't you?
yeah,
You know, Gujarati, Hindu, you know.
That's right. I'm from Calcutta originally, so Bengali
That's
is
my favorite place in India.
Oh,
I've been many
really?
times.
Oh.
Yeah. I've done the races. You know, when they do like the Royal Ascot almost. So someone took me. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Something about Kolkata. Maybe it's the sort of the old British history. I don't know. I found that there's something about that town, you know.
Right. Okay. I love it. It's just, it's one of those things where because when I lived in Switzerland, so I was taught in French and I learned German. I had Italian classes, so
Swiss French.
Yes, Swiss French. Yeah. It allows you to have a few words of conversation. If I go to South America, I speak a few words of Spanish. It just opens up
so many
dialogue.
doors.
Exactly.
It's funny. Learning languages doesn't help you get a job, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, it might help you find a girl or have fun, But interesting. Sometimes people learn, 5-6 languages and they think, oh, this would be great for my career. I don't think it really helps.
I think you might be right. No, it doesn't particularly, unless you speak it fluently and you can do business in that language. But we're also in an English-centric world. I'm always, fascinated when people stand up on stage and do a talk in their second or third language. I mean, I find it hard enough in English, which is my first language.
What did your parents want you to be when you grew up?
What did my parents want me to be? I think they would have loved me to be an academic. There's a respect for intelligentsia and a professor of economics or something like that. Yeah.
And what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I dreamt of being a pilot, but my dad told me.
Did you? Yeah. When your dad worked in Air India, was he in the corporate side or he was a pilot?
He was on the commercial side.
Oh,
yes,
of course you grew up around it. And as a little boy, it was like,
that's right. That's right. And I have a good friend, Mike Jenkins, who's a pilot, and he's my hero. He's a perfect dad, and when he's out flying, and he's a great golfer. So that's what I hope to be when I grow up.
My wife's obsessed with air crash investigation. That's like a go-to relaxation thing. I mean, as someone who works in emergency medicine, that's apparently very relaxing watching planes crash. But there's a very funny psychological thing that people work in stressful environments. They you practice stress by liking horror films and liking, but it's amazing how many planes crash. I mean, you think, oh, they don't really crash, or it's just very occasionally safest form of transport. No, they do crash. Things go wrong quite a lot, actually, But the good news is the stats are going right down, like the number of deaths, Anyway, it's a jolly conversation. Do you have a go-to karaoke song?
Not at all, because I can clear a room if I try to sing. I'm not going to.
You've got a very nice voice.
I cannot sing to save my life. And,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you managed to get 2 songs right. I was kind on you. I could have gone remote. Now, I'm not sure what I think about this question anymore, but we like to ask it: office dogs, business or bullshit?
Office dogs. I'm all in favor of dogs. Yeah. Absolutely.
What sort of dog do you have?
Oh, I've got a Cockalier. His name's Charlie. He's half King Charles Cavalier, half Cocker Spaniel.
Wow.
He's a glorified lap dog, but he's good company. And what I enjoy is if I take him for a walk on the common, you end up chatting with other dog owners and you have interesting conversations with new friends.
And you only remember their dog's name. We had a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, and actually a Cocker Spaniel. I love Happy Cocker. They're such friendly dogs, but Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, not such a bright dog.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I think you'd be all right because you've got a mixed breed. But no, we had one when we grew up, and they're slightly famous for it because they're quite unusual that they were bred as a pet, like a proper pet. Anyway, so very sweet. Have you ever been fired?
Have I ever been fired? Not like fired like on The Apprentice, but yeah, I've lost jobs along the way. Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any you remember?
Well, yeah, because, I was caught up in things like, during the financial crisis, for instance, and, it was just very difficult times. I was lucky enough that I landed on my feet, but...
What, in 2007, 2008, you were out of Shazam then? You were working there still, no? Or
yeah, I actually, the story is that I had hired my boss and my boss's boss at Shazam. So I'd taken a back seat and I was still a shareholder and on the board, etc.
Oh, wow.
But I wasn't working there full time. But the reality is that, people go through these, whether it's business cycles or personal setbacks or whatever. But, when that happens, then it can be traumatic. But I was lucky enough to land on my feet, yes.
Yeah, it's so even back then you'd started to move on to other things. When what, in 2007 or after the crisis?
Yeah, that's right. So at the time I was head of innovation for a media company called Bauer Media, which was previously EMAP. And this is where I also learned about the challenges of big companies and being an intrapreneur, not just an entrepreneur, and which is why I've got a lot of empathy. It's in some sense, when you're writing the rules as a startup, you can do anything you want to. It's very different within a more established business. And that's why I understand it, because I had at least part of my career in those large organizations.
Do you think you can teach entrepreneurship, or is it a matter of character? Like, they've got to be ADHD or crazy or whatever.
No, I don't think you can teach it. You can practice it. And I think that, like any skill, it's a matter of trying and practice. And I think that unless one has the opportunity, it's very difficult to get good at it. Like, why would you suddenly start coming up with new ideas, taking risks, doing things which the mothership doesn't do? It's just an abnormal behavior. So I think it needs a provocateur. It needs, vision. It needs,
the environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the encouragement.
Yeah.
And be honest, what's your vice?
My vice?
Yeah.
Oh, I've taken up golf.
Golf?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's like the top sin.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I regret it. And because I've discovered I'm terrible at it.
You get worse too the more you try. That's what I found.
Don't say that.
No,
yeah.
I mean, apparently this is quite common with golf. I tried it a bit and was like, oh, I'm all right at this, and it just got worse and worse and worse. How long have you been doing it for?
45 years, but.
You must be absolutely awful by now.
I started playing when I was 10 with my dad, and then had a long break, and I've gone back to it. But it's really, rubbish.
It's a fascinating game, actually. It's unusual as a game, isn't it? So what is it? The only game you play against yourself? The only game that you could play with anyone of any skill level with a handicap system?
Yeah.
Some clever things about it.
Yeah, I would not want to wish my company on any playing partner right now, but I'm working on it.
What would be your top tips for any founders and entrepreneurs?
You're in it for the long run. It's it's not a sprint, and we ran off at sprint pace, and unfortunately it took us 18 years from start to finish with lots of ups and downs. And the reality is that if you're fortunate enough that your startup is just a sprint, then good for you. But the reality is, for most of us, it's going to be a longer run than that.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I mean, it's amazing what you can achieve if you set a longer time zone, I guess. We try and rush things too much. Are there any other tips you have or anything else you would share?
I think that inevitably you're going to face rejection. You're going to have people who won't buy into your vision. People will always come up with objections, and just the ability to, not take no for an answer, to, keep plugging away until the stars align, until you get the support you need, until you make the breakthrough. Unfortunately, I've never seen any kind of alternative to that. There's no magic bullet.
Sweat.
Yep.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes.
It just occurred to me that when Shazam used to ring it up, you'd get money at that point because you'd get a clip of the phone call. In fact, you could charge. And then when you got an app, you get free listens. So actually, did it get worse when your revenue model, when you got the app out?
Oh, it got worse, I'll tell you, because our initial model was a reverse charge SMS. So you'd get a text message which cost the listener, and then unfortunately we had to give more than half the revenue away to the mobile operator.
Yeah.
And then when the App Store launched and Shazam became an app, initially we charged, it was $5 or £5.
No one downloaded that.
No, they did, but our competitor at the time went free. So that...
I don't even know there was a competitor.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah. Let's not say their name on air.
We managed to,
God, how difficult. So they just went free on you.
Exactly.
And they had maybe a bigger VC backing them or whatever.
They just thought that was the best way to steal shares. So we had to respond. And what ended up happening was we had to keep inventing new business models because the last one wasn't working. So in the end, advertising was a big source of revenues because Shazam was installed on 30 million devices in the UK. And so every time someone Shazammed a song, there was an opportunity to show them an ad. The day that Apple bought Shazam, they killed that altogether because it just didn't want anything interfering in the experience.
Yeah, wow. And actually, it would have been quite unusual that you had a startup that actually at least generated money at the start, you know? I mean, that was the good thing about what you did, I guess.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the music industry took a nosedive between the year 2000 and 2018 because of problems with piracy. And then people stopped buying albums. When Spotify launched, then we partnered with Spotify.
Did that affect you? Why did that affect you?
In a positive way, because people could Shazam a song and then, add it to their playlist. Or even before that, when iTunes was the new...
It's the partnerships,
Yes, that's exactly right. We generated hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue for iTunes by people Shazamming a song and then buying it.
Oh, wow, of course. Well, you've been brilliant. So this is the end of the show.
Yeah.
We're going to play a little game called Business or Bullshit. You need a paddle.
Okay.
One side says business, the other side says bullshit. Hold it up and answer clearly.
Okay.
And we may have a little discussion about it.
Okay.
All good in the hood? All good in the hood.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with this one. Investment TV shows, I guess, like maybe Dragon's Den or, those sorts of programs.
Oh, I'm caught on this one. What do I say? Okay, I'm just going to go with the BS because I actually think that they are a little bit manufactured. And I actually happen to know one of the Dragons, Nick Jenkins, who's a fantastic guy, very thoughtful. But it's mostly for entertainment. And I think that as an entrepreneur, what you're looking for is capital or people who will back you through thick and thin. And I think that, if you have a fantastic performance on an investment show, it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in the long run. Equally, if you get turned down, it doesn't mean you're dead in the water. So,
do you think it's good for people to see it as a way of what it might be really like to go and see investors? Do you think they represent what it's like walking into an investment meeting?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my portfolio companies called On Hand, the CEO Sanjay Lobo went into Dragon's Den and got an offer from multiple dragons, and I think Stephen Bartlett is one of his investors. Now, just to prepare for that experience is where the learning comes from. Just to face those dragons is a real trial by fire, and he passed
it. Smashed it. What's On Hand do?
On Hand is a corporate volunteering matchmaking service. So let's say if you work for a big company like PwC and you have 2 volunteering days per year, and then you want to find the right opportunity for volunteering. So that's what On Hand does. It matches you up.
We need to do that here. We keep talking about it. We had one of our partners die who was, we've had 3 deaths. It's been very strange, but including my sis. But anyway, he just loved helping people. So we've been meaning to do that actually. I'll have to look them up.
On Hand, yes.
On Hand, very good. Next one. The early bird catches the worm.
The early bird catches the worm. I'm going to go with a yes on that.
You an early man, are you?
I think so. Not because it's the only way, but I think that trying to be ahead of the game is it's a nice way of looking over the horizon at what's coming up. If you mean literally, not at all. No. Did you mean wake up early in the morning? Hang on, I'm going to change my answer. Yeah.
You're not a morning man, no.
Not at all. No.
Good man. I mean, I do sometimes. Friends are saying, "Oh, I'm not getting anything done," and they say, "Well, what time do you get up?" And then I'll get up about 9, and then faff around for a couple of hours. I'm like, the day's done, mate. You might need to get up earlier, But I hate the mornings.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I misunderstood the question. I'm going to call it a virtue now because sleep is good for your health. So there you go.
Oh, very good. Now, there's an obvious answer to this, share options.
Yeah.
But there are people who think, no, hold on to your capital. People aren't motivated so much by it. Where are you on the share options?
So on share options, so every single employee at Shazam had options in the business. And I think that it really helps to motivate people to be aligned with the mission. And I think that it's just, participation in the future of the company. So I'm a big believer.
Not everyone values them, do they?
No. And often they're worth nothing at all. So it shouldn't be seen as a substitute for, plain old cash. But I think that
certainly not in the eyes of the revenue.
I guess that from the perspective of trying to tune into what's the purpose of the business rather than what's my job, I think that's where share options can be very powerful.
What's the purpose of the business? So making them be a bit more engaged with what are we up to here.
That's exactly right. What creates value for the business? So it helps with economic thinking. It helps to think about how do we actually create value in this business? Because you have a share in this company rather than you have a job and you show up and you push these emails around and you go home. Yeah.
Email disc jockey, as my friend described their job. Let's do, where are you on the, I have a feeling I might know, work-life balance?
Work-life balance. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to have to go with,
Even though I'm sure you have worked extremely hard in your life at stages with very little work-life balance.
That's right. That's exactly right. So I broke that rule. So my life was completely unbalanced. I used to work 16 hours a day or whatever. I didn't exercise, didn't sleep well, didn't eat well, didn't watch any movies. And that's just not a good thing in the long run.
But you built something.
True. But it's not sustainable. And I think I was lucky because I didn't have any family crises at the time. I didn't.
You were young, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah.
I find it, I was speaking to someone the other day and they were talking about, startups, very stressful. There's a lot of mental health issues in startups and the support. And there was a bit of me that was like, oh, what a load of nonsense. You're starting a startup. You're supposed to work like a dog. You're supposed to be stressed out to the hill. I mean, it's madness, starting a business. Maybe I'm being unsympathetic, but I just felt like, oh God, we're going to start having sort of like, have to have mental health support. I just feel, be aware of what you're entering into, and being young helps, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know whether I'd do it now,
Yeah, that's right.
Am I being unfair though, that it's, if you're doing a startup, you're going to need mental health support and that sort of counseling and things like this?
I see it all the time in my entrepreneur circles where people who are just trying to power through eventually hit the wall, or it causes suffering in other ways, health problems, for instance, like people getting,
illnesses and
exactly. And that's where the body's telling you that, it's not
Slow
sustainable.
down.
Yeah. And so work-life balance before you get to that point is critical.
With the global competition, I mean, you're competing against your competitor who's working night and day. I mean, I'm so mixed about it. It's this phrase that's come up, and I don't know. For me, the question is more about what's your purpose and what are you building. If you feel it's worth doing that, because my dad has worked like a dog my whole life. He's a workaholic, but he built, he took my granddad's business and he built it, and he's created a structure and a framework that gives other people stability, and it's a great business. So I find it he slightly scoffs at the idea of work-life balance, but scoffs the wrong word. He's laughs about it, but he's almost laughing at himself because but I don't know. I wonder whether you can put the two together. I think maybe there's a luxury coming along in society. Maybe we talk about work-life balance now because we can, is that coming? But if you're meeting an entrepreneur and you're thinking of investing in them, they're young and they're working crazy hours. I mean, would you say to them, look, I think you need to take it easy? Is that something you feel that is going to make them have a better business or anything like that?
So to be specific, so if I meet an entrepreneur who doesn't believe in work, there's no chance that they're going to be an entrepreneur for a long time.
Very long,
right?
yeah.
Second is, I advise my CEOs to do a digital detox at Christmas time, for instance, because they tend to work themselves to the bone. And if you do that, then you're not going to have that balance. And that means that investment is not going to pay out if they burn out within 5 years. So this is not a theoretical question. I advise them to say, you need to build some downtime in, not when you're going to lose a client or...
Well, that's better. It's not, because work-life balance in my head is, you should finish work at 5. You're more saying you need to take a break sometimes.
Yeah, because...
Unplug.
Yeah, in order to play this game, you're over-motivated as it is. And so that's where you need to build in the balance.
I'm not sure I like these people. Regulators.
Regulators. I'm going to go with... I'll tell you why. Because I think that regulators are trying to do a service to society. And what it is, it's about the efficient functioning of the capitalist system. Because capitalism has certain flaws. So monopolistic behavior, for instance, or taking advantage of, customers or consumers who are not educated. So part of a well-functioning, I think, society where business can flourish is regulators. But the important thing is that they should be, working alongside and with business, not against business. So the goal is to, how does one improve the economy? How does one allow opportunity for, startups to flourish alongside incumbents? And
do you think they're getting it right a lot of the time?
Well, yeah, I think so. I do think it's a very challenging job. But I was head of innovation at Virgin Money, for instance, working.
Oh, were you really?
Yes, yeah, with the FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, which is very forward-looking, and that's why you see so much activity in fintech in the UK.
FCA is probably a good example, isn't it? You get a sort of over-regulation, I would say, in areas. I don't know. It's a sort of red tape monster, isn't it? When were you at Virgin Money?
So I was there from 2014 to 2018.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, what an interesting job. Okay, so let's do a couple more. Oh, there's a good one for startups.
Yes.
Hockey stick growth.
Hockey stick growth.
Is that important? Do we need a hockey stick growth?
I think let's go with a hockey stick growth. Yeah, I've been consistent in my answers, haven't I?
You have. Yes, you're very positive. I like it.
This is a terrible flaw. I need to cut back on that. But no, I think that it's the dream.
You got to show it though. I mean, hockey stick growth always seems to be you won't raise money unless you got a hockey stick. Can't you have growth like that?
True. But I think it's the nirvana, and when it happens, it's magic. It's a dream come true.
Yeah. Very nice. Silicon Valley.
I'm gonna go with yes.
Business.
I'll tell you why. I was there with the family this just a few weeks ago, and we had our first experience with a self-driving car. We were in a Waymo. And it feels like magic, where there's no driver, and it's been in the works for about 10 years or so.
I saw the video of all those cars like in the car park, and one of them set off, and then they were all they were all trying to move around each other, and they were all like saying sorry to each other. It was just hilarious. Yeah, I think Silicon Valley has changed so much, hasn't it? I sometimes wonder, I mean, we had the Silicon Valley roundabout, I'm sure you remember, but I sometimes wonder whether we've tried to just take this culture to cookie cutter around the world. I wonder whether we could, do our own kind of style of Silicon Valley, go to events and it's all sort of, everyone's got to be, speaking out and everything like that, There's some flaws to it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Let's do two more.
Okay.
A subject close to your heart: climate change.
Yeah, climate change. So this, I think, is a generational problem for all of us, and something which no individual government can solve. It's not something which a charity can solve. It's all of us, I think, working together in partnership. So between activists and people like BlackRock, who's exhorting global leaders to take this issue seriously and acting as an activist investor in many companies as well, or whether it is government bodies and the United Nations. So I really do believe that we will have such a radical transformation in the landscape in the next 5, 10 or 15 years. And the giants in the climate space are, tiny, unheard of companies today.
And you think that, I mean, that's in the things we would expect, like solar power and wind power and stuff like that? Or are you meaning in sort of more companies we haven't heard of? So things that we can't even expect, do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, for instance, I invest in a company called Dandelion, which produces geothermal energy. And so they drill into the earth to tap into the heat of the earth for both heating and cooling. Now, the reality is that in Iceland, something like 90% of the power is generated from
almost
geothermal.
All of it. Yeah,
that's right. But I was very lucky. I invested alongside Google Ventures and Bill Gates's Breakthrough Energy Ventures, and they are very sophisticated investors. They know what we're doing, but I wouldn't expect most people to have heard of Dandelion.
Right.
I'm hoping it has a bright future.
How many things have you invested in?
Oh my goodness! I mean, it's got out of control. It's something like it's like 250 companies between both my individual investments and the funds. So I'm very fortunate. I count my blessings. I invested in Al Gore's Generation Investment Management Fund as well, and they're doing some amazing work in the areas of planetary health and human health and financial inclusion. And this is why I find it absolutely fascinating, because I feel like a front row seat to the future. I can see what these
What's coming.
the crazies are working on, the dreamers. This is what they're building every single day.
Is Al Gore still very focused in that area?
Absolutely, yeah, very much so. Yeah,
maybe it was the best thing he ever did, not win the presidential election.
Could be, and he won the popular vote as well. So
because I think probably that disappointment may have driven some of his determination. Do you know what I mean? To go and do something else. I don't want to water down what he wanted to care about stuff, but it'd be a different world slightly. Because I think he was quite instrumental in that sort of early shift of people's understanding, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think that's right. I mean, I think about. What's my second act? I call myself a recovering entrepreneur. What next? And Al Gore was a politician, and what next? I think what he's done is change the world much more fundamentally. He's had a much greater, impact because of the awakening and the leadership that he's shown over decades. And I think that's very inspiring.
Is that your long-term goal to have a second act, or do you have a long-term goal?
Yeah, I think I'm fishing for it. I think it's there's in my mind a fear factor when there's new technology, or when there's the fear of the climate crisis, etc. But I think that I see a world where one can live between humans and machines and the planet in harmony. And to achieve that, I think will take a concerted effort. But I think it's a fight worth fighting.
Do you think this government's going in the right direction?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that this government specifically, I can't comment on. But what I see from global leaders in terms of collaboration and being much more united for challenges at a global level, yes, much more so. I think the days of nation-state petty conflict is definitely not behind us, but it's not on the front burner anymore as it used to be.
People are so cynical online, though. People feel that there's an Illuminati, it's all against us and stuff like that. You're clearly a glass half full person.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And the reality is that it's not necessarily being driven by old people in the teak offices. It's young activists like Greta Thunberg who has lit a fire under some of these major societal changes. And I think I believe I spent some time working at Save the Children, and I'm a big believer in the power of youth. And I think that's where the inspiration will come from. People who don't have these preconceived notions and can believe that anything is possible. That's lovely. Although it's slightly irritating, very young people telling you how you should do more for the climate change. It's like, just wait 10 years for life to punch you in the face a few times, and you might find it's trickier than you thought. But that's me being cheeky. But they have the better ideas, aren't they? But it's whether or not they're going to be able to I don't know, they're going to be able to make the changes they hope, I guess. So I have lots of conversations with young people. So I've got a partnership with the London School of Economics, and
my gosh, mate, you do a lot of things.
Not really. It's just I'm lucky because I guess I'm a sponge in that sense. I feel like I can learn from lots of different places. And what I've learned from young people today is that sustainability is it's a given. It's not something which you say, oh, well, should I do sustainability? It's just part of the fabric of what they aspire to. And that's not obvious, I think, for people of an older generation. You come to it. It's a learned challenge,
yes.
But not for young people today.
Well, we've just started doing ESG stuff. And I think that's right. I think my generation, your clients tend to be vaguely around your age, but they're not sort of massively. I'm not saying any of my clients don't care about things. Quite the opposite. But in terms of are they is sustainability reporting and that sort of thing, is that front and center? Well, no, most people are just trying to build a business and make money. I think what's interesting about what you're saying is it's so important to that young generation. They will demand it. Exactly. As a thing, just as much as they expect a coffee machine or whatever.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm saying, which is if the business does not have a mission or a purpose to it, you will not get the best and brightest talent today, I believe.
So I'm hoping to get a bullshit out of you.
Okay.
Let's try this one.
Yeah.
It's a cracker. Brexit.
Oh, here we go. I got to try
this. Yeah. Very good. Well, I could have gone either way there.
No.
It would have been like a hat trick of business, or a clean. A sad move for the country, I guess. Was it, in your opinion?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for a number of reasons, but I think it's been proven that it's been damaging to the economy. It flies in the face of all, trade logic, and
we're our own little tribe now. We're back to being the UK tribe rather than the European tribe. That's not probably brilliant,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that one needs to look at the common ground, and I think the common ground is international collaboration and cooperation. Hopefully that leads to trade, and these things are fluid as well. So the European Union, as it stands today, might have a different form in 5 years from now, and the UK might well be in a different place. So I think Brexit specifically was a tragedy, but I remain relentlessly optimistic about the future nonetheless.
I think we'll end up going back. I wish we just gazed ahead a bit more. Everyone argues about what's going on now. I wish we'd say, look, can we all agree that in 200 years, we all need to be one world and one country and no tribes? I mean, we can have different cultures, and Paris can be different from London.
Right.
And then, it's like plotting a business. Okay, that's where we're trying to get to, isn't it?
Yes.
So we've all agreed that's where we're going to get to. So should we work towards that? Because I don't know, people have argued against me about this, but I struggle to think of arguments to say, so you're saying in 200 years we still want to be fighting each other?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Is that your position?
But you've nailed it, because the United Nations, for instance, is only about 70 years old.
Wow.
Before nations would just squabble with each other because that was the nature of the nation state. It just doesn't make sense. And so what you said is exactly right.
Well, gosh, you think with the Germans and stuff, when you watch something about the Second World War, it's so recent. I mean, that's my grandfather's time. I mean, my father was born during the Second World War.
Right.
My father was alive during the Second World War, where we were tearing each other apart. You think, gosh, it's so close to us, and we have moved forward, but I don't know. I just everyone argues so much now, and it's like, can we just try and make a plan where we're going to get to? And fine, if you're uncomfortable saying that in 20 years, say in 200 years. I mean, you don't want to mention things, like terribly complicated things like Israel and stuff, but you just feel the whole world, would it sign up to that? I guess people wouldn't. I guess people say, well, no, I don't want to be just one world. And it's like, you do understand we're tribal. You do understand how this brain's wired up, that it's going to be dangerous if we're not. You know?
You played that song for me, Imagine, by John Lennon, right? And that's what John Lennon was saying. Imagine this world. And it starts with that imagination. If you can imagine, then you can work backwards from that. And that's the same thing with, an activist like John Lennon, who had this dream. And it's the same with, if you're a leader and you've got to kind of, fire people up. How you get there will be challenging. It might have twists and turns. There'll be setbacks along the way. But that's what I believe is our job as leaders, is to, use that imagination. Yeah.
It's an amazing song. It can still bring me to a tear sometimes if I'm having a bad time. And actually, amusingly, John Lennon was a very combative, apparently quite a difficult character and stuff. But I think it's incredibly powerful to set that out. I mean, thank you for bringing it back to that. It's a nice message to end on.
Yeah.
This has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for doing it. You scored an incredible 7,312 points. That's an absolutely smashing score. Thank you so much. I think we've covered a lot of ground. So Dhiraj, thank you for coming. Thank you, Dee. It's been great. Thank you, Romeo, for staying quiet. And that has been this week's episode of Business Without Bullshit. Ciao.